Scott, good to see you. How
Good to
are
see
you?
you. I'm doing great. I just got married last week. So,
What?
yep, just got married. My business partner, A. Kovacs, we've been working together for 10 years now. And like the last couple of years, we just started dating. So we have love in the time of COVID, and we just got married last week at a little ceremony at our condo because we couldn't have anybody over. So everybody got to watch on Zoom, and it was even officiated on Zoom by a buddy of mine from Tennessee. So it's pretty cool.
That's perfect. We're going to talk about dystopias today, and you just joined the most famous of all dystopias.
Yeah, and enjoying that dystopia in the middle of a dystopia. So in the middle of a conflagration, whatever you're going to call this COVID thing these days.
It's not a bad time for some things. I've got a couple of friends that just had kids, and they're stuck at home, not getting any sleep, and they're like just like everybody else. So they don't have the FOMO that usually comes with having newborns. So it must be a good time to get married too, because you're not going to leave each other right now. You're gonna stick it out.
Exactly. Any bumps in the road we hit over the next couple of months as newlyweds? Well, we're not going anywhere. We both take social distancing and masks and all that stuff. Take it all very seriously. So we're still in our window of, we had a photographer in the house. And although she was socially distant, we're still like, we're just going to be locked down, not see anybody for 2 weeks, just to be sure, to protect other people, make sure we didn't contract anything. So far, so good. We got a few more days to go, but we're sticking around. We'll hang out. It'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. We've been doing the same thing. I was in Portugal when everything got locked down. So when we
Okay.
flew back, we took the 2 week quarantine very seriously, and like basically didn't leave our apartment for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But I've been kind of training for that, living on a boat for a while. You get kind of
Yeah.
used to confined
Yeah.
quarters.
Your trip was via air, not via your boat?
Yeah, I flew back from Portugal. Went over there to help a friend with a conference, and then the conference got canceled. So
Cool.
we ended up delaying. We stayed over there an extra week because we met a friend, and he had basically a compound with all these different houses under construction, and we just moved into one of them, and it became very much like a silo story. Like the houses had numbers. Like we were in silo 32 for a couple of weeks.
That's perfect. Do you have any plans or do you feel the temptation to like buy a ton of food and supplies and get on your boat and just get the hell away from everything and let this, let humanity die out behind you?
No, I'm actually the last time I'm in New York now. The last time I was in New York was on 9/11, and I felt it less traumatizing to be in the center of it than some of the people I know who've been distant and just watching it on the news. Because when you're in the middle of it, you can see it's just not as bad as people make it out to be in the worst examples. If they show this, I grew up in hurricane country, and when there was a hurricane, all the news guys would come and like aim a camera on the one tree that went through the one car, and all around is fine. And the same here, like if there's looting in one shop, they're gonna, like, all the camera vans are gonna park around that one storefront, and
Yep.
99% of the city's fine. So no, I definitely don't want to avoid this. Also, my friends who are on boats are having a hard time right now because different countries are locked down. If you
Okay.
can't leave your boat or get people in or out, and getting supplies is difficult. So what I want to talk about with you today is, this is the second time you've contributed to an anthology that John Joseph Adams and I edited. The last time it was Into the World. This time it's like the world's gotten uncomfortable. So we've gone from apocalypse to dystopia. I'm going to get the print books
Great.
in the next
You guys
few
did such
days, but
covers. The covers are fantastic.
man, like, the good thing about it is, like, it didn't even matter what we put inside them. People are going to buy these just for the artwork.
Absolutely.
But the bonus is, if you buy these books with this beautiful artwork, you're going to get an incredible series of stories in there, including Three by You, that I really loved. And as we talked a little bit before we started recording, what I love about your writing is it does not hew to the extremes. You love writing in the grays, and it's with these stories in particular, you don't know who to pull for. You don't know who the good guys. You're just telling a complex story with that leaves you thinking. I still think about your story months and months after I've done my edits on it, because I still don't know if the outcome is good or bad. How is that deliberate on your part? Like, how are you approaching that?
With this one, with doing a trilogy and a dystopia, I thought it would be fun to take a fairly common sci-fi trope, which is a variation on the alien invasion or the invasion of the body snatchers type approach, and then make the protagonists, they are in the clear majority, and the clear majority has already been infected by everything. So by starting out on the side of those who've already been converted and who are extremely happy, and the world is clicking along better than it's ever clicked along before, and violence is violence among the converted is gone. It's this wonderful utopia. You get to see the people who are usually the heroes of these kind of stories, the humans who haven't been infected, fighting back, trying to bring down Skynet, and trying to get humanity back to its relatively primitive, angry, violent self. So that was intentional, to be like, okay, well, we've seen this story before many times. Let's take a look at it from the Cylons' point of view, which is one of the things that Battlestar Galactica did. It still influences me to this day. You'd watch an episode and like, I don't know exactly who am I supposed to root for here. There's no clear-cut good guy or bad guy. So that's what I tried to bring in to this.
I love that, and you deliberately call this, this thing that's spreading the love.
Mm-hmm.
And what it really raised for me was, the idea that if you had a perfect utopia, the more that we establish equality, the more you have to hamper liberty. And usually that's a great trade-off. Most people, especially these days, think about as liberty as the ability to do whatever they want with no one stopping them, rather than the ability for us to get along civilly so that no one's rights are being impinged upon. But I think you really present a world without strife as a type of dystopia, which is the opposite of what we're usually talking about. And it's unique in our anthology that you kind of get this close to a utopia and present that as maybe that's not the best thing. And it's so refreshing, man. Really enjoyed reading it. Is there any plans to explore this further? Are you done with these?
I don't have any plans at this time, but you guys put out anthologies a lot, so maybe I get to revisit it somewhere in the future. It's outside of what I call the Siglerverse. So my stories are all in the same world, and one book impacts what happens in the next book, even if they're really big cataclysmic type events. So we tend to focus most of our work to writing in that timeline. So my books aren't all a series, but 15 books are all kind of set at different points along a timeline that adheres pretty closely to the one we're living in now. So we're trying to finish up a couple books in the far future of that timeline right now. And I kind of liked, I liked where the trilogy ended up, and it's a von Neumann device. Something comes from outer space, lands here, and if I understand it correctly, traditional von Neumann device is it gathers material from the ground and builds factories and is able to make copies of itself and send out rocket ships out looking for intelligent life and out to other planets, and it just expands ad nauseum forever. In this, it's more, at some point in the distant past, something evolved that was able to take over and unify sentient creatures. So in our stories, the von Neumann device arrives, and the way it does it is just, instead of by building its own factories, it takes over sentient beings, has us build the factories, and everybody lives together and is very happy in this idyllic communist type situation. And then to the point where can they or can't they launch their own rocket ships to go out and perpetuate the rest of the cycle. So it's kind of a one shot in this little particular space. If we were to go to the far past of the far future, it would look probably too different to tell that story. So right now, I think it's parked in a comfortable parking spot, and we may read it in the future.
I think so too. It's interesting though, if you ever took it to the alien invasion angle again, it would be these humans invading somewhere else to continue this process. Are you familiar with the examples in nature where a microphage or a virus will reprogram its host to do something not in its favor, like it'll make an ant climb up to a leaf and wave its arms, and then to make it easier for a bird to eat it, and then it like comes out of the bird pooping, and the ants eat that, and it makes ants kill themselves. And there's one, I think, that makes mice become untimid, and they'll go right up to a cat. The cat eats, and it's like it's a rewiring of the brain to make the host do something not in its own favor. I couldn't stop thinking about that when I was reading the book. It was like, this seems like something that could evolve, because as alien as it seems, we have examples of it on Earth.
A lot of examples. Parasitism is a regular theme in my work. What put me on the map was the Infected trilogy, which are the infected, contagious, and pandemic. And it plays exactly on that trope, dealing heavily on the work and research of Carl Zimmer, a nonfiction science author, who wrote a book called Parasite Rex, which is phenomenal. And in that book, I learned that 2/3 of the species on Earth are parasites. 2/3. So it is the most successful life strategy, which is to parasitize something else. And just like you said, there's so many different parasites out there that can make worms go into the worms that can't survive the water, go into the water, make crickets go into the water. There's all kinds of things being eaten from the inside out, and the shutting off of parts of the brain and turning off the survival instinct or hijacking it that's a huge recurring theme in my work. Because as you say, we can see it all the time. You can go on YouTube, look up parasite hijacks host brain, and just look at the number of things that happen. And it's gross, it's shocking, and as sentient creatures ourselves who feel we have self-determination, it's terrifying. It's terrifying to think that something else can slip into your head, change something about you, and you are no longer yourself. You are enslaved by this other creature's motives.
I think if you Google that on YouTube, you see videos of me just saying "yes, honey" to my girlfriend over and over again. And maybe that's what marriage will do to you. You'll get that parasite in your brain. It could be. So it's okay. Hey, it's a painless like cohabitation or viral existence.
If you look at it from that perspective, most of the parasitized species who succumb to this kind of thing, it does seem to be fairly painless. Like they're just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to crawl up to the top of this tree and die here, and everything's great.
Yeah. It does. That's the first thing it does. It kind of numbs us to the struggle of life, which is, in your story, like, and something else that really I loved about this story, and I think it's going to be one of the ones that stands out for readers when they pick up this series, and sticks with them, makes them think about it. It came up in The Matrix, the first film, like why the first simulations didn't work, because life was perfect, and the human brain rejected that. And I really love what the Wachowski sisters came up with that concept, was because I found that if life is too easy for me, I don't feel like I'm enjoying it enough. Now, that doesn't mean to minimize people who have like real struggles, because you have to have your basic needs met before you're lucky enough to look for friction in life. But is that something you found where like you love leaning into a little bit of struggle or friction or conflict in order to feel more alive and more free? I have, my new wife and I have been dating for, a few years, and I was married before, and still great friends with my ex, but we didn't really connect at a deeper level. And now being married to this wonderful human being who is much more focused on, okay, you're upset about this and this, let's see what we can do to make that better, and is really a big problem solver. One of the things that's happened is I have days where the traditional problems and things that make me angry or frustrated just aren't there anymore. And I feel out of my element and disconcerted because I'm not constantly tilting against the windmills that have always been there. And it's weird to feel anxious because there are fewer problems than there were before. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. Certain personality types, you need that windmill to tilt against. You need things to be like, okay, well, I'll show these people, I'm going to fix that. I'm going to solve this problem. And without that, it feels weird. So I can see where they're coming from in the Matrix. Like the reason we have evolved to this level on this planet is because somewhere within the human brain, nothing is ever good enough. You can have paradise and perfection, and somebody's got to come along the line. I think we can do this better. Or somebody's going to screw with it one way or another. So without challenges and constant obstacles, a lot of people, I think, feel very strange. Yeah, it's something I've thought about as we've worked on these dystopias, because you have to think a lot about what utopia is, what it entails, what our goal is as a civilization. What are we working towards? What's the asymptote that we hope to achieve? And it's uh, when when you don't know what the struggle is in life, you have to assume there is something wrong, and not knowing what it is means that now there's something wrong and it's invisible to you. So it's a second level of stress. At least when we have problems, whether they're habitual or it's a car in the garage that we're rebuilding that will never run right, that's always leaking oil. At least we know what the problem that we're working on in our life is. And as they start to go away, as life gets better and better, you assume there's still a bunch of problems. You just don't know how to identify them, which is it's like having an invisible issue there. So
That we see that in culture now with so many people buying into conspiracy theories, even absolutely preposterous conspiracy theories, because a lot of people have a relatively comfortable life, which is a fairly new thing in human societal evolution, to have this many people who are not wanting for food, water, shelter, comfort, etc. And there's that part of the brain that's always looking into the shadows, looking for that tiger, and they're starting to see things in those shadows. And yeah, the human brain's wired to look for problems and look for plots.
I think you nailed it there. There's something that I've gotten interested in the last few years, the idea that we don't basically, we're always telling ourselves a story about why we feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. We tend to think our emotions come from the stories we're telling ourselves. But what they're finding more and more is that we feel a base emotion, whether it's an anxiety or a fear, and then we make up a rationalization for why we feel that. And then it becomes this loop, and we believe the story we're telling ourselves. And I think you're right about conspiracy theories. There's a low level of anxiety that's probably healthy and normal. Mm-hmm. When you feel the anxiety, but you look around and your immediate needs are met. You've got food and water and clothing and shelter. And so what's this anxiety about? Instead of learning that, hey, this anxiety is not necessary anymore, and I can start to work on feeling less of it. I feel like people are coming up with a rationale for their anxiety, and it explains why these conspiracy theories don't have to make sense logically. The story itself, it's more about making sense of the internal conflict, I think, for the people that are in it. And then they meet other people. It's especially with the world network the way it is now, you can meet other people who feed into that and give you justification. Hey, it's not wrong to feel anxious like you are. You have a very good reason. There are lizard people running a pedophile ring in the basement of a pizzeria. And it's like, okay, now I understand why I can't sleep at night, because that sounds really scary.
It does seem to satisfy a need for a lot of people. It also, unfortunately, gives it's a tool for community and finding a tribe. And these groups tend to be very supportive of each other and encouraging, like, you now see the light. You're one of the special ones. It's a way to make people feel special and smarter and kind of like chosen ones. And then they all gravitate together, and it's a community just like any other community, just like being a football fan, etc. Except it centers around something that is probably not true. So people find a home in doing this, and it does satisfy that need as well.
Speaking of football, you've written an amazing series. I was lucky enough to read a couple of those in early preview drafts. Love the world building. I know that's part of your bigger universe as well. You must be a huge sports fan to write so many books that take place around this space league. What is the hardest? What are you missing the most out of not having sports right now?
The thing that hits me the hardest, having played football and wrestled in high school and wrestled in college, and knowing how formative and special those moments were, even though I was so small and slow, football was never going to be a significant player there. Having that particular community and that constant discipline, and it helped make me the person that I am. So now I have nephews and nieces who are looking down the barrel of no sports season, possibly. And it's tragic. Like, if you're a senior in high school and you've worked for years and years to get to this point where, all right, now I'm going to be a starter. This is my year. I'm going to do well in lacrosse and everything's going to go great. And that gets pulled out from under you. It's heartbreaking. And even Not as much, but also in college. Because again, in college, you've got people who've been working 10, 15 years at a particular sport or craft to get to the point where they can be the best competitor they can be. And now that's going to get taken away. And seeing as the vast majority of college athletes don't go on to the pros, like that's it. Your last year is gone. So that's, it's not just football or everything else. That is kind of crushing to me to think about how many hardworking young people are not going to get that final hurrah. And of course, then as a sports fan, as a huge football fan, I've been around football. My earliest memory in my whole existence is being on my dad's knee watching 16 millimeter football film because he was a football coach. So the very first thing I remember is football. And it's the NFL's talking like there's going to be a season, but I have my doubts whether there'll be a season. So that will suck because I tend to work all the time except for NFL Sundays. And then I'm not working. I'm going to sit here and watch. It's my favorite thing to watch. So it's a big bummer.
Yeah, I'm watching the NBA try to relaunch, and they have a much smaller team, and they're having positive tests pop up here and there. And football squads are 60 plus.
Oh yeah.
Per team, plus all the support staff. It'll be very difficult. And I know, the big thing here is there are people losing their lives, and there's people losing their jobs, and there's people who are never going to be fully healthy, who recover but still have issues. Not having sports is pretty far down the list of all the bad things going on right now. But I do think it's wrong to minimize whatever disruption people are having in their life. I mean, I've got a friend who's 14-year-old kid, like, can't hang out with his friends.
Yeah.
And it's what he's going through is worse than anything I went through as a 14-year-old. So we can always keep in mind the bad things going on in the world without minimizing the fact that this is disruptive and bad for.
Yeah, it's all bad. It's all bad across the board. And then there's the professional sports and college sports ecosystem supports a vast number of jobs, and that's going to be hammered, just like the restaurant industry and the tourism industry and many other places are getting hammered right now. The one though I can't believe they haven't got their act together is baseball, because baseball, if you do simple things like third base coach, first base coach, and umpires move back 6 feet, the ref moves back, you get cameras to watch the strike zone, you could play that sport and be very socially distant, and they don't seem to have a way to get that together yet. But
yeah, agreed. That, and tennis is another one that there's certain, golf came back and is being played. Formula One is picking back up. I got into disc golf for some reason during quarantine. Like, YouTube suggested a video, and it's actually a lot of fun to watch. I am enjoying it more than golf, but I'm so starved for any kind of live competitive thing that anything they'll put on. The marble racing became a thing, and I was like, I'll watch that.
Yeah, it's one of the things you miss. There's there's all kinds of forms of entertainment. People like all kinds of things, but the live drama in two teams or opponents facing off, and you don't know exactly how it's going to turn out, is always thrilling. MMA is back a little bit, and that's always fun to watch. But these are, in the bigger picture, there's sort of minor issues, but there's also a lot of jobs on the line, and not just the people playing the game. Yeah,
totally. And mental health is going to be a concern for a lot of people who don't have anything to entertain themselves with, and are I think that's why I think people buying books, watching good TV, watching films at home, playing board games. The mental health aspect makes you realize that what you and I do is more important than just entertaining people for a little bit.
Yep.
Since you're good at always finding the different angles of things and finding the shades of gray, what positives do you see coming out of what we're going through now? Because to me, that's what dystopian literature is about, is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or how things are going to improve.
Well, there are several nations who've gone through more severe pandemics than we have in the past. And because of the behaviors they picked up and the social changes they made, they haven't been hit as hard as we are being hit in America. So I think one of the positives is going to be that despite the weird political bent that you're somehow non-patriotic if you wear a mask, which I'm still trying to figure out where this is actually coming from, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. But after, hopefully, we get a vaccine, we get through this. This is not going to be the last one of these we have. This is absolutely the new normal, is waiting for the next thing to mutate slightly as the world becomes much more interconnected, plane travel, et cetera. We're going to see this again. So one of the good things is, hopefully as a nation, we'll learn a really valuable lesson about always being prepared, being quicker to take up common sense stuff like, this appears to be killing people and is very contagious. Let's just slow things down for a little bit. And we'll be more used to that. More people will be used to wearing masks. More people will be used to cleaning up around them. If you have to go to a shared space, you'll be more cognizant of how to protect yourself in that situation. So as bad as COVID is, if the next version of swine flu is something we are biologically unprepared for with no really natural antibodies, as a society, we'll be much better prepared for it. So the next time this comes, hopefully it will not catch us off guard. I think that's the one really good thing. I think also a lot of people are spending more time with their families and their social circles, mostly online, but people have a lot of time now to like, God, I really haven't spent any time talking to my brother or my sister. And I think we're getting some things out of there. There's a flip side of that too, which is people who don't want to do that in person or don't have that social circle are really struggling. But I think that what we're going through now will prepare us, hopefully, in the future for something that's way, way worse.
Yeah, I agree with you. This has been a very contagious virus, but it hasn't been an especially deadly one. With all the movies and the fiction that talk about the worst case scenario, it's 80% of people who catch something die, and epidemiologists will tell you that you can't have a disease that's too deadly, or then it wipes out the host too quickly and doesn't spread. But something that finds a balance like this, where you gets quite a few people infected and then kills 10 times what we're seeing, would be a game changer. It'd be great if we learn the lessons like you're saying. But it's been disheartening to me. One of the things I did not expect out of this is that we would politicize doing the most basic thing possible, which is just wearing a mask. And this thing is actually very easy to defeat. If it requires us going in like spitting in each other's faces, basically, which is what talking face to face. If you could see how much spray is happening during a basic conversation, I think it would turn most people into germaphobes. Very simple measures can really clamp down on this. But my attitude has changed because we live in a college town type area near San Diego State University, and you would see in a grocery store or walking around outside, Asian person wearing a mask, just regular outside. And I was always like, okay, that seems like a little bit of overkill. And now I look at it and be like, that's normal that's so normal for them. They did it even when there wasn't a major threat afoot. And it's such a simple thing to do. And watching people try and poke holes in it, the basic common sense of that is unbelievable. I can't figure it out. Yeah, and it prepared them so much. I mean, we're going to be over 200,000 Americans dead from this year, probably by the end of the summer, the way things are going. And in a lot of Asian countries, you're 1,000 they're agonizing over 1,000 dead. So it's big numbers, so we lose focus on it. But each one of those is a human who's gone, a family that's in mourning, a life in disarray, a business that's hurting from either losing its owner, its employee. Like it's just unbelievable that we're losing as many as all the wars since World War II. Yeah. It's interesting that your series comes out now. It's like we are in a dystopia right now, where what you hear isn't always true, and that kind of approach, or what I said isn't what I meant, and watching people turn their back on science. And like this feels like we're living in a bad movie right now. This feels like we are the village people from Jaws, and the mayor's like, well, we can't not have our tourist season, and the people are like, well, okay, let's have the tourist season anyways, even when there's a danger. Yeah. And of course there's a significant reason for that. People want to get back to normal so they can just get back to their jobs and not lose everything that they've made. At the same time, we're like, this is some really common sense stuff
that we could be doing that'll get us out of this faster. And that's the dystopia win. And people just don't want to do it.
Last question for you, and then I'll let you get back to your very busy life that I'm sure you're having while you're locked inside your home. Where do you, give me a snapshot, pick the year, 10 years, 15, 20 years. What's the big thing around the corner that you are spending time thinking about? Like what cooks your noodle at night?
We, A and I have been trying to break into Hollywood in some regard on and off for a while. We've had a bunch of books optioned, and the new one that was looking really promising until this stuff hit in Hollywood shut down was an adaptation of my book called Nocturnal, which is produced by Lloyd Levin, who did Hellboy and The Green Zone and Boogie Nights, and is written by Danny Bilson, who just wrote Defy Bloods, the Spike Lee movie. So really talented, high-powered, well-recognized people taking this, the best team I've ever had. And now I don't think it'll get made because it's a more old school shoot. There's a lot of people on set. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's too many people interacting. So the thing I'm thinking about now is trying to sort of do it in reverse, which is come up with, well, here's the parameters right now. We could have, if you could do this, 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 and this, you could have a TV show shoot, or you could have an online show, or possibly even a movie, low budget or middle budget movie, and then go back and tailor the plot to hit those points. So kind of looking at this like a new, like Blair Witch. The Blair Witch, they couldn't figure out how to get cameras out of the way because they didn't have enough stuff. So they're like, let's just leave the cameras in. It's part of the milieu. And that kind of approach to things is what I'm spending my time on. So I think there's going to be some really good, some big good things that come out of Hollywood being shut down, which is we're going to quickly get to a point where if you know what you're doing storytelling wise, and you can direct, and you can get just 2 or 3 actors together, and you can make a compelling story out of that, somebody's going to buy it because there's not as much new stuff coming around. So this is a huge opportunity for the grassroots filmmakers and storytellers to be able to create a product that fits what we see around us, like lots of Zoom meetings, for example, that kind of thing, work that into the story. And then you can easily see where some college kid right now gets together with 3 people, make a thing, and Netflix buys it. And now they have their thing out in the world. So that's what we're thinking about, us trying to how to change the kind of stories I tell from the ground level of what can we actually do with a camera and a shoot and a craft services table right now, and then build it up from there. So we're just getting started on it, but it's pretty fun.
That's brilliant, actually, because there's new stuff coming out because things were in post-production before they shut down, but nothing's getting shot right now. So we're heading towards a big dry spell. And if you have content available, people are going to be gobbling it up. This is funny that you had kind of the same situation I was in. I've had several things get as close to production as they've ever been. One thing even has been greenlit while we're under quarantine. So it's like Hollywood playing one more trick on me they've never thought of before. Like, let's greenlight something you can't actually shoot. So, what I'm hoping as we're going into a writer's room for 2 different things is we'll use this time to not feel the pressure of the production schedule and use time to write. Mm-hmm. I hope what we see out of this is a flourishing of the best story that we've seen in lots of different mediums, because we had more time for things to bake and spend time in the stew.
More time, and mothers the necessity of invention too. You can't. Okay, I want to do a cop show, for example, old school Merton rigs, and like we're gonna have car chases, and then things are gonna blow up. Like, well, you can't do all of that stuff anymore. Now, if you want to tell a compelling story in that particular genre, you have to find other ways to do it. So I think even for experienced, seasoned storytellers, this is going to push people out of their comfort zone. Well, here's the things I've done for the past 7 series I've shot. Now we can't do any of those. You got to go find a story that fits that mold. I think we'll see, which is going to be a big angle storytelling tangent. Now we're going to see different kinds of stories being told, and it's more accessible, more democratic. We'll see more diverse voices and stories, because we are probably, if things don't get better within the next year, you're going to start seeing a lot of shows shot on Zoom with few dramatic scenes, but it's about the narrative thread that ties those together that makes it feel real to us while still telling a story about characters that we care about.
at least people can still animate, so we can keep getting seasons of like Rick and Morty and another Into the Spider-Verse.
I'd love another Into the Spider-Verse.
Me too.
Definitely the animation is going to be a bigger thing. And that what else can be done with the live acting, but there's no end of the stories to be told. So we should be seeing bigger things from that if people aren't already working on it. I hope are they making another Into the Spider-Verse? I think so.
Yeah, they're working on it.
Oh, sensational movie. Loved it.
Yeah, especially getting all the trying to get all the live actors of the Spider-Mans over the years to all do a voiceover for their version of the character. So kind of, everybody complains about all the reboots of the different Spider-Mans, but with the Spider-Verse story being told now, you can see all of them as legitimate. If you have a favorite one, well, that's a real one as well.
It makes a ton of sense that they can go back and kind of retcon this, and now it all makes sense from that perspective.
Yep. Well, thank you for creating a new universe for us and for being a part of the anthology again. It's such an honor to have you. So good to see you and talk to you, because we don't see each other at cons anymore since those are all canceled.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing the chat. Hope everything goes great, and I'll be pulling for you for get something made in Hollywood, because I need more stuff to watch.
It'll happen. We just don't know when. The only variable is time.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me on, buddy. Appreciate it.